Welcome to the Spike Camp podcast. Spike Camp is a free online community for hunters that support conservation. It's a great place to share stories and your experience with other hunters. As a member of Spike Camp, you get access to all of our hunting live streams, discussion channels, contests, hunter resources, and events that we host. Membership to Spike Camp is free. Our only ask is that you are a member of a hunting or conservation group before you register. Head over to spikecamp.com to join us. This episode of the Spike Camp podcast is brought to you in part by Alpine Riflecraft. Alpine Riflecraft is a Canadian firearms company that is redefining what an ultralight mountain hunting rifle should be. Their flagship product, the Zenith rifle, starts at 4.5 pounds and is the lightest carbon-barreled bolt action on the market today. Alpine Riflecraft rifles are 100% engineered, designed, and manufactured in Canada. To learn more, visit their website at alpineriflecraft.ca.
We are very excited about tonight's guest. He is an exercise-based chiropractor. I'm going to have to figure out what that is because my chiropractor doesn't look like he does a lot of exercise. He's a dedicated hunter, and he's now a guide. He's a member of the Beyond the Kill team, and he's just launched a new backcountry instant coffee company called This Is Coffee. Matt Ward, a.k.a. Wardo. Welcome to Spike Camp, my friend.
Thanks so much, you guys. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's great. We've been trying to connect for a while, and every time I talk to you, it just seems like you just keep getting busier and busier with something new. So glad we could hook it up.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's it's it always seems to be one of the good things that seems to happen in this. There seems to be no end of opportunities to make your schedule busier than it should be. You know exactly what I'm talking about, though, with the Spike Camp stuff you've launched, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Blake and I, everybody knows it's a passion project for us, and it's we both have real jobs and lives as well. But if we could do this full time, maybe one day we will. We'll see what happens. But it's a lot of fun.
I feel you there.
Right on. Before we get going, Matt, maybe what you could do is give us a little intro and background on Matt Ward. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, all that fun stuff.
Sure. Yeah. You know what's actually kind of fun about this is like years ago, kind of when I started, knocking out some podcasts with the Journal of Mountain Hunting Crew and Beyond the Kill podcast. I got to talk about this stuff, but lately it's always more new stuff. So it's actually like kind of nice to go back a little bit, and seemingly it's not very long ago, but I do enjoy reminiscing about I kind of remember my time talking about the beginning of getting into this and just how green I was with the hunting world and everything, and now how jaded I am. No, I'm kidding. And just how everything's gone and stuff. So I look back with fond memories because it's not that long ago, but it seems like it's longer than it should be, I guess. So again, like you said, my name is Matt Ward. I'm from Vancouver Island, from Nanaimo, BC. Grew up there until I was about, I think I left when I was 18, and I worked in the oil patch for a winter or so, and then came back and then moved away for school, and then came back for summer, and then I lived downtown Vancouver for almost 10 years, and then kind of to where I live now. But before that time, if we roll it back to my time on Vancouver Island, I spent a lot of time outdoors. Growing up in Nanaimo, you kind of had a couple paths. You could go to the seedy underbelly of Nanaimo, or you could enjoy your time outdoors. And I like to say I did a little of both, actually, which I think everything comes in good flavors and moderation. So I spent a lot of time grew up golfing, mountain biking, surfing, skiing, backcountry skiing, snowboarding, actually, and then getting in trouble all over the place. But still, one of the fondest memories I have are those days where I would mountain bike, surf, and ski or snowboard all in the same day, or mountain bike, golf, and ski in the same day. Not very many places in the world I feel like you can do that. So I grew up like most people in BC. I don't think especially like Southern Coast BC, I don't think how good you have it until you start traveling the world a little bit. In 2015, I got to spend like 10-12 weeks traveling around Europe when my online strength and conditioning business was kind of rolling, and before I went to Cairo school. And I remember going to this place in in Slovenia. This is called the Vintnar Gorge, and it was beautiful. It was this walk along this river. You paid, 20 euros to go down there, and I remember walking along this river and kind of leaning over to who I was with, being like, honestly, the Nanaimo River is kind of better than this. Just kind of like, another thing, not to say that, it's the best in the world, but I was just like, man, the more you travel, and Chuck, you travel an absolute ton. The more you travel, I think the fonder memory, the more you appreciate how good we do have it here in British Columbia. And I think that probably goes for a lot of hunting stuff as well too. The more time you spend away, the more time as much as things are changing here and now, I feel like we've got it pretty good. So anyway, so I grew up there and spent a lot of time outdoors. Then my time in Vancouver kind of took me into, I was running track at University of British Columbia. I was a kinesiology student. And then in and amongst there, I was driving logging trucks in the summer, and I was, a rappel forest firefighter at Rap Attack, and really getting my feet wet with a lot of fitness, and really dove in, I would say, to the strength and conditioning world, not just, being a raw trainer, but actually diving into the movement mechanics of a lot of things due to schooling and then just my job after that. And so post that time, I was a CrossFit coach, strength and conditioning coach, got to work with a few professional athletes, got to, volunteer my time and work at GF Strong, the Brain and Spinal Cord Rehabilitation Center, and kind of everything in between. I used to say, my rewarding, stressful job was working with, people on rehabilitating spinal cord injuries. And then the pain in the ass job was working with professional hockey players and professional athletes. They're, getting people 0.5% better, and they don't thank you for it, versus people who are, learning to use their hands and bend, twist, and turn again. It's much more rewarding, which actually ended up kind of branching me into where I am, or the decision that I made in 2015 to end up actually going back to school, going deep in debt, going back to school, end up going to chiropractic school in Portland, Oregon, because I was so entrenched in the rehabilitation world with training and where I was. But I knew I was helping people more than some of the people that were meant to be maybe helping people more than me, to try and put it semi-poetically correctly. And I thought, man, I'm really passionate about this, and I want to take this next step. So what can I do? And I just happened to be working. I'd spent some time, as he helped a lot of the UBC athletes with this guy, Jerry Ramajita. He was a Seahawks chiro. And I had no idea he was a chiropractor, because most chiros I know are kind of that, like, I actually didn't really like any of them. They just kind of crack. Even you come in with a knee or ankle problem, they're like, let me adjust your neck. And if you see one of those guys, probably don't anymore. They're not really helping you out in the best of your interests. They're doing it for the best of their interests. And so I was like, man, I kind of want to do something. And Jerry I was like, where'd you go to physio school? He's like, actually, I'm a chiropractor. And I said, no shit. And so we got to talking, and then I ended up working for a fantastic chiro as a kinesiologist. And then from there, I went to school in Portland, Oregon. And then around that time, just before there, I actually, just before I went down, Adam Yankee from Journal of Mountain Hunting was like, Wardo, you interested in running this kind of pilot project? We're doing something called Mountain Strong, which was essentially what all the strength programs are now. I mean, Mountain Tough, or insert any number of them, Mountain Tough or Mayhem Hunt or Elk Shape, whatever you want to look at. We were kind of one of the first to the game there. We just didn't have enough staying power. I was going to school. Adam wasn't going to run it full time. It needed kind of a full effort and quite a bit of time and money involved in it. And I'm not bitter about it by any means, but it was cool to see that we were like, man, if we can connect kind of the fitness side of things with this badass mountain hunting group, and I'm not talking about a lot of like dyed-in-the-wool hunter guides, but I'm talking about a lot of normal people. It's going to help you. And one of the things we're going to talk about later, Chuck, is looking at what you're doing and trying to help you get into the sheep mountains for another 10 or 15 years. Right. So if we can connect those two dots, it started to become something I was very passionate about. So that's the first time I went to Sheep Show. And then after that, when I was moving back up, I decided to move to Kelowna. I ended up kind of coming back up, and Adam was like, you be interested in doing a little hunting when you get back up here? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do a little hunting when I get back up here. He's like, you interested in being in a movie about hunting when you get back up here? I'm like, movie about hunting? And then so I was like, okay. And you know, and then sure enough, you know, my very first, I'd call it really my first hunt. I did a little bit of hunting before that, but my first hunt was basically a 10-day backpack hunt in the West Kootenays for elk with the bow. So, which was the Beyond the Kill series, which is on YouTube and all that stuff. And then from there, it was like, you know, you're either going to love it, because that was a bit of a shit show. You know, just a lot of vert and a lot of wet, and not a lot of bulls. So such as how did I know that was going to really just be kind of BC elk hunting, to be honest? So
yeah, exactly.
You know, when you're new at it anyways. And so from there, I was like, that was sweet. I can't wait. And I think after that, I think I did 2 flying hunts the next year. And then after that, I did maybe 2 flying hunts and 2 more 10-day hunts. And all of a sudden I'm spending 60 or 80 days. And that was 2019. And then, I mean, you know, last year I felt very fortunate to be able to put some time in, you know, for the second year with Ben Storak at Arcadia and really try and hone the craft. And I really do owe it all to that start with Adam, with the Journal of Mountain Hunting, and then the people who were along with it. Like when I go out and my first hunts with, you know, guys like Lauren Trousdell and Pete Gooch, and, you know, after that, you know, Nolan Osborne and Ben Storak, like you're just getting the cream of the crop of guys doing it the right way, talking about the Wild Sheep Society, talking about conservation. You know, like you can just go down. I think I look back and like, if it was just more this, my entry into hunting was just, you know, nothing wrong with it, right? But just dragging roads, and if it's brown, it's going down, kind of that more mentality. I think what a different path this would have led me down. Don't think I would have been interested in it versus the mountain hunting side of things. So, you know, from there, and then I guess overall what I do now is I love to be kind of on the perimeter of the Wild Sheep Society of BC. I'm not a board member by any means, but I get to do a lot of work with them, and I kind of like to say I'm a bit of a rogue element in there. I kind of get to speak my mind with no, not that I do, but with no, I try to be very respectful, but I get to try and speak my mind with no real repercussions, unless if they just wanted to stop working with me or listening to my ideas. But I love WSSBC. I think they do such a great job for wildlife in general. I mean, obviously it's sheep dominant, but really they're the shining star of this province, I'd say, on and a lot of places for what I think it's going to have to turn into is privately funded wildlife management and conservation, because our government's probably not going to care for much longer. So that's, again, maybe a bit of a rabbit hole, but I think that's a big passion of mine that's kind of coming down the pipe. And my thing with that is, again, is to kind of try and connect the communities of fitness and hunting and conservation. And, you know, kind of like we were talking about earlier, Chuck, you know, stop pissing and moaning amongst each other on what brand of clothing you wear or what your preferences are for, you know, spotting scope.
Exactly.
And, you know, and try and become a bit more of a unified group. Because I think with the type of people that I've met in this industry, you know, I feel like there's nothing that can get in our way if we can actually pull our socks up and work together. So I think, and if it's just one little hike and one little ruck and one little conversation at a time, and that's my part in it, then that's my part in it, right? Yeah, geez, I don't know, that was rambly, but I hope that's okay.
No, that's good. Well, okay. Well, it's been nice having Matt on. I think we can shut her down now. We know his whole story. No, I'm just kidding, buddy. I was just going to say, you know,
the thing about having me is I talk for a living and I talk a lot. So sometimes it's really nice. You're not going to you'll probably have to tell me to shut up more than you'll have to tell me to kind of go more words out of me.
No problem at all. You know, just a couple of comments there, you know, back to, you know, the first days on the, you know, out in the field with Adam and the crew. And you made a very good point there that you guys were ahead of your time. Well, that speaks to Adam and, you know, his passion project and Journal of Mountain Hunting and Beyond the Kill and the podcast and everything else. I mean, he's been ahead of the game for so long and so many things, and he's a real pioneer and a really good friend as well. And
absolutely,
you know, just looking through your listening to your bio there, one of my questions was, I was going to basically say, well, you jumped feet first into the industry, and I was going to ask you what that was like. Like, you just gave us like what is it, 5, 6, 7, and 8 year synopsis on Wardo's intro into the hunting space, and it just speaks volumes about you as a person, because that's what you're like. I mean, you're such an energetic guy, and you bring that positive vibe. I've sat in on a couple of your seminars at the Wild Sheep Society shows over the last couple of years, and I think I laughed when I saw you first announce This Is Coffee, and we'll loop back to this later on in the show. The first thing that popped in my mind was, I was at the Kamloops show a couple of years ago, and you came up. I was sitting in on your seminar, and you walked up and grabbed the mic, and you went, "Whoa, all right, I've had 6 cups of coffee, guys. Look out. It's going to be a busy one." And you were just like jacked, man. Like, that was a caffeine rush right there. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And you just captivated the audience, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I was always the running joke when I've done a ton of seminars, either not so much for teaching, but a good handful. And then I've taken a ton of seminars, whether it be, strength and conditioning or soft tissue work or, golf related or whatever it might be. And they usually have free coffee at these things. And my buddy Corey Peterson has been at a handful of these things with me. And he kind of, every time he turns around, he sees me back at the coffee thing, having another. I don't really drink it past like 1:30 or so in the afternoon, but until then, I'll probably have 400 cups. If I'm going to pay $2,000 for a weekend, I'm going to get my fair share in shitty hotel coffee. Let me tell you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. One of the things I wanted to kind of chat with you about was, and you touched on it as well, was, your fast track into the actual boots on the ground hunting experience that you had with all those great guys that you listed there. And, I compare your experience there to somebody walking on to spring training baseball in Arizona as a walk-on tryout, right? And these guys get out there and you got the Bo Bichette's and the Vladdies or whatever on the field, and on comes Wardo and laces a double on the first pitch, and he's standing at second base wondering, what do I do now, guys? Where do I go? What do you want me to do? That to me is the image I get of Wardo getting in the hunting space, is like, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, bring it on, let's go. So
I think instead of a double, I think I'd probably be more like hit by a pitch, take first base, steal second, figure out the first way, and then actually make it home on an RBI. And that'd be a pretty good way, I think, on probably my baseball analogy. But I do appreciate it. Thanks. There's just no way. I'm such a bad salesman on something I don't care about. Like, you'll know, you know what I mean? Like, people ask me, I get asked, I don't get asked a ton anymore, but I used to get asked a lot of firearm questions. And not that I don't care, but it's not a passion of mine. Like, I don't care what rifle I use. I don't really care if it fits me. I don't, I just can I see through it? Can I shoot it? Like in a semi-consistent group? Good. Like, I don't, I'm just, that's not my thing. Maybe it will be later. I feel like I've had to learn more for archery because there's just more to learn for archery. But nonetheless, it's one of those things. And so guys will message me and they'll be like, hey man, like this big long question. I'm like, honestly, man, I'm not even gonna pretend. Like, I'm like, money asked Nolan Osborne, or I mean, go to the source, go to Omer at Precision, or any number of guys know so much more than me that I definitely do try and stay in my lane on stuff that if I don't really care about it, like I said, you'll probably know, because I'm just so bad at talking about it. Just like, I don't know, but it's good.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, you look at, especially in the hunting world, there's so many things that carry proficiency, whether it's, the tactics, especially, that's where you've got to draw the line. I think when you're talking to somebody about what you know and what you're faking and what you may or may not know,
right?
When it comes to the real technical side of all the different facets. And that's, one of the things that I look at in my, my hunting partnership with Blake, for example. He's got so many strengths, way more than his old man, but there's certain things that I just have a lot more experience on. And an example, case in point, is firearms and hand loading and guns. And, Blake looks at it this way. it kind of, I'll be talking to him about a project. For example, when I'm working on a couple of gun projects with Don Lynham, and I had chatted with him this morning. I met him super early, and I was filling Blake in on it, and I'm kind of rambling on about what's going on. And Blake's looking at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I understand it. And then the flip side, Blake starts talking about, something related to the tech side of Spike Camp. And I'm like, okay, is there a button I click or what? Right. Same sort of thing. If you know your lanes, like you said, and you can respect them and respect other people in their lanes, then it's great. And I think one of the things we're trying to do here with Spike Camp is give everybody an opportunity, either experienced or inexperienced, give them a vehicle that they can find out more information, educate themselves, or on the other side, share your knowledge, share what you perceive as your expertise. And at the end of the day, you're not going to get flamed. You're not going to get shadow banned. You're not going to get kicked off the platform. And that's one of sort of our philosophy is, and my philosophy is, I'm always learning. Every day you learn something new, right? So
100%.
I think interesting.
Yeah, I think what goes along with that too, Chuck, is that it just provides a way more inclusive environment, right? Like you're just, it's so, I love hearing other professionals talk about something they're passionate about and when they're knowledgeable about it, right? There's nothing worse than someone who thinks that they know everything, who goes on and talks about, something they know an inch about, and they're trying to talk about it for a mile's worth of space. And someone who's on there, you lose credibility instantly versus saying you'll gain more credibility being like, this is the amount that I know. I'll tell you that. And then after that, it's all speculation for me, but hey, who knows a lot is Chuck. Like that's the guy you want to talk to about X, right? Or you want to talk to Blake about Y, and you'll end up building a better community. And that kind of more inclusive environment is kind of the thing that we're missing, right? Like it's so easy on social media to kind of shit on one another because you're a bit of a keyboard warrior in this world versus the group. I do feel like we are turning a corner with some of our hunting community friends and stuff on people that are actually end up building each other up and helping people out, and not just not just friends fluffing other friends, but actually people seeing the value in it. It's going to build a better environment for ultimately saving, the benefits and the pleasure of hunting and the history of hunting in this province, right? So, exactly. I mean, I'm pretty new to it here, and my God, it'd be really cool to not just be new at it and then it's gone, right? So I think that's one of the things my avenue is fitness in it. I'm not going to start a firearms course to try and bring everybody together because there's just so many better people that could do that than me. But as far as bringing the community together through, conservation and getting out and testing gear and getting some fitness in, that's one of the things that I could probably hold a flame to a lot of people with, I would say. So that's what I want to do. Right. Sure. And that's what we're doing. McCabe and I'll plug it right now, but McCabe and I are doing the ruck and the shoe laps, ruck to the shoe laps, ruck for the shoe laps. That's the name. Ruck for the shoe laps.
That's it.
This year, July 5th, 6th, 7th. I actually don't know if there's any spots available left. 20 people.
Wow.
It's $100 a pop. And with that, we're going to buy, that's enough to buy a collar. And then we're going to have some sick prizes. I did it last year as a bit of a random throw together, end up getting 16 people out. So we got enough money for a collar for a sheep, which we gave to the Wild Sheep Society. And then this year we're going to do, a couple $1,000 for registrations. That's one collar. Then we've got Mike Keeley. He's going to match the registration fee. So that's 2 collars. Our goal is to start to get more and more funding together to try and get people. And we can do that through a lot of ways too, on a tax write-off and stuff through the foundation. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I want to, that shoe lab sheep region, talking to Proctor, it is in bad shape. And
it's in trouble. Yeah.
Big trouble. So whether they've relocated because of fire, whether they've all died, whether there's Movi in there, probably a combination of all three. I think our eyes are going to turn, Wild Sheep Society's eyes, I think, are going to turn more towards that region. And if we could get, 20 plus boots on the ground in there over the next 4 years or so and really make a good push on what we can see, we'll spot some goats, and you know, I like to do it out of bear hunting season, so there's not a bit of a mixed bag of why people are coming out. And then it's just before the sheep opener, man. Like if you want to test some gear and you want to see what your fitness is like a month before the season, you know, like if there's something you got to work on, like whatever, you don't have a lot of time, but you have some time. It's a good way to come out and again, just be part of the community. Right. So I think that's super exciting. I can't wait for more of that.
Yeah, for sure. We'll make sure we pump the shit out of it for you guys, and you know, and anything we can do to help to promote it, we're there for sure. And then of course, you know, that just gets the wheels grinding here. We can find ways to raise more money to do more of that and in different areas and stuff. So
yeah, and I think that's it, right? Like if someone comes out and they're like, we're gonna do a event and we're gonna do conservation and hiking, I'm like, cool, like great. I wish there were 20 of those. Like it's not, I don't own it. Like I'm not making any money on it. Like it's a passion project, right? Like it's not meant to be competitive. It's meant to bring us more ideas to the forefront of what we can do. Right. So the more people that want to do it, the better.
Yeah, right on. Well, congratulations to you guys for putting it together. I mean, it's a great initiative. And like you said, if nothing else, it's getting people, it's checking a lot of boxes, and you're bringing in awareness to what's going on with those sheep out there. And why not, like you said, why not throw a pack on, do a little hiking before sheep season? So
right. Yeah, man. 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. Well, that's a good segue into what I want to talk about for a little bit with you, Matt.
Yeah, man.
You know, your primary career as a exercise-based chiropractor, I'm sure it really has been an important part of your positive impact in the hunting space. You probably don't remember this, but oh my gosh, it would have been 2018 or 19. I was on one of my first sheep hunts with two buddies, and it was on our hike in, and it was day 2 of a 2-day hike in. I was side hilling through the timber on an elk trail, and I stepped on what I thought was solid ground, but it was actually a hole that was about 16 inches deep and 2 feet. It was covered in leaves, and I didn't see it. And I was carrying at that time a 70-pound pack. And when I hit the bottom, I heard a pop with my foot. And if you look at my hand, say this was my foot, there's a little bone that protrudes out the side of your foot right there. Yeah. And when I did that, I knew I was in trouble, and I was with 2 younger guys. We had to hike about another 2 hours to get to camp. And when I got to camp, I pulled my boot off, and my whole entire foot was black and purple. And it was after I made it through the hunt. We ended up killing a ram, and I ended up reaching out to you afterwards for some rehab and treatment. And I think I just got you on Instagram, and you were so generous.
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah.
You still have the history. Right on.
Oh yeah, for sure. I took notes on it too.
Yeah, and you know, I took your advice and kind of worked through some stuff. But what that incident did to me was it made me realize it's, you know, the human body is so fragile, and it's so easy to really derail your hunting career if you're not careful and if you're not in shape. And I think everybody, including lots of guys that are on the show tonight, we all know somebody who you look at them and go, wait a minute, you're a sheep hunter? Like, you know, you don't look like you could go very far in the mountains, but some of these people are just, they grind it with nothing but just, you know, positive mental attitude. Oh, yeah. And I think it's, you know, that's certainly a huge part, if not the most important part, is your attitude and your ability to grind it. But at the end of the day, you can be that much better if you take care of yourself and train. And I had not trained much for that hunt. And I remember coming back, not just from the injury, but it was like a 10-day trip. But coming back, I mean, I was freaking sore and beat up. My chiropractor, he was like, what the hell did you do? Did you get hit by a Kenworth? Like, it was ridiculous. And so it was that point, you know, and at that time I was probably 20 pounds heavier than I am today. And, you know, it was like 6 years ago. And so it really flicked the switch for me, and I started to train. And I'm one of those guys I'm not a fan of the public gym, like going in with 500 people. I just did it for 2 months in California, and that's a whole nother podcast in itself. I got to tell you, the California gym in 2024.
A wild place.
Yeah, you probably know this, but did you know that girls line up for a big booty machine that helps
Oh
you
yeah,
build a big booty now? Yeah, I had no clue.
100%. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the guys get mad at you when you go to try it because they want the 14 girls with the nice
That's it.
spandex. You know,
Booty,
oh yeah,
booty by Brett Contreras, man. He's the glute king. That's it.
who knew? I did
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I
I
kind of wanted
often
to
think I should have picked building glutes instead of trying to rehab Hunter's knees and feet and back. It'd probably be a much more glamorous, luxurious career.
Well, I mean, both of them are rewarding. One might just be rewarding in a little slightly different fashion, but yeah,
Yeah,
we
one
got to
is
keep
type 2 rewarding, one's type 1 rewarding. I'll let you make up which one it is.
exactly. So yeah, what I wanted to do is do a quick little exercise here.
Sure.
No pun intended. So Blake's in his mid to late 20s. I'm in my mid to late 50s. You know, we're sheep hunting partners and hunting partners of, you know, of all species. So I'm going to give you like a quick snapshot of my training, what I do in the winters or off season or year round, and then I'll let Blake do it. And I'd like you to pick apart what we're doing maybe and add some
Sure.
value for us. So, you know, just a little background. Blake's been an athlete his entire life, soccer, baseball and hockey. He's one of those guys that I'm pumping his tires a little bit, but he could grab a 5-iron when he was like 12 and walk up and hit it straight down the middle at 170, you know, just like down the middle. Never played. His brother could take golf lessons. I could, and he'd just kick our ass. And on my side, I'm just that stubborn nose down, get it done, grind it out, walk till your toes are bleeding kind of guy. And, you know, it's a very different mindset, I guess, as far as athleticism goes and whatnot. So my routine looks something like this. So typically I lay off the training. I usually peter off right after sheep season. Like usually you got that gap, you do opener. We're opener hunters, so you get back in, you know, mid-August. I might train a little bit more, and then, you know, then it's elk season and moose season and deer season. So I don't hit the gym at all till Christmas time. And Christmas time, we're making sausage and I'm eating and I'm getting fat. January rolls around. I'll start off doing, you know, we have a home gym at my house. I have a home gym. So I'll do like, you know, start off with some light cardio. My equipment at home, I've got free weights. I've got all kinds of stuff. I've got an actual Stairmaster and a treadmill, elliptical and all that stuff. So I'll start doing light cardio off and on with in between travel. And then a couple years ago, I started really researching online different programs for strengthening your knees. And one in particular was the knees over toes guy. You've probably seen him online, and
Yep.
they're,
100%.
and they had like 50 different things that they do. And what I did is I kind of picked apart different exercises and techniques from a bunch of different sources. And one thing that I really like is I made a little slant board. So like when I'm training on my knees, I'm using that slant board, which basically elevates your heels off the ground. And so I started doing some, like some different styles of squats, dumbbell squats. I even have a trap bar that I use a little bit there. I do some backwards walking on the treadmill, slow speed, and trying to work it. And then I'll switch over. I'll start doing that, and then I kind of work my way up from the ground. I'll start working on core, upper body strength, and those things sort of advance progressively until it gets into spring. And then once spring hits, I'll start doing a lot more hiking, a lot more cardio, and I'll start introducing a pack with some weight in it. And then around June, sort of early June, the strength training kind of backs off, and it's sort of a maintenance program. And then I'll start doing a lot more outdoor hikes with a heavier pack, and then just more cardio and just kind of cruise up, up into sheep season. So that's sort of my snapshot of my routine. So I'm, mid 50s. What is that? Am I on the right track, or what could I do better, or what, or less of?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, a few things there. I mean, a lot of stuff I think is really good. What you have, I think you're perfect for the season. I'll start January, when you kind of start to take training a little bit more seriously, and then we'll move right to December. and I'll just kind of do some broad strokes. So I'd say January to May is kind of your time. And maybe for you, because usually I see the older a guy is, usually the stronger they are because they're just naturally more stiff. So you can spend a little bit less time working on pure strength and a little bit more time working on range of motion and like that kind of way to go about it. And then making a little bit more time on, some of that mobility stuff. So you do have a great program overall. Like if you look at a periodized program for a professional athlete, it's going to look like you're going to have this off season where you're going to kind of like rehab injuries, work on mobility, and then you're going to get started on some just general lifts or maybe kind of maintenance mode. And then you do strength and hypertrophy kind of in there as well. And then you kind of move to more kind of like skill specific, sport specific, and then some underlying cardio the whole time. So what I would say is in January, what I'd be doing is working. I would realistically, I would dump the stair climber and elliptical, and I would have a treadmill and probably a concept two bike. You're just not going to get any better zone 2 cardio work out of a piece of equipment than one of those zone 2 bikes, one of those concept 2 bikes. And you can train that zone 2, which for anybody who doesn't know is basically going to be for most people 120 to 130 beats per minute. And you want to train that for around 3 hours a week or so. It's not hard. It can just be a walk. But it's one of those things that if you already have the machinery and you already have the stuff, like, man, that is a fantastic piece of equipment that I haven't yet see as far as just availability be beat. You could do the same thing with a rowing machine, but there's more technique to a rowing machine than there is to riding a bike. So I would say riding a bike is better, and it's fantastic for vascular development within the quad muscle, which is having more vascular development. I don't mean, Ronnie Coleman, like Mr. Olympia vascular. I just mean like having greater capillarization through the muscle delivers more blood through that muscle, and it'll end up healing faster, recovering faster, going longer, all these kinds of things. So I would say zone 2 and strength, you're like nailing it. The best thing that you do, maybe without even knowing it, is you identified a spot where you're not very competent, which is your knees. And you searched out someone, and Ben Patrick has just made it super sexy. I think Stuart McGill, when I was in 2009 or 2010, I was at this Stuart McGill conference, and I was lucky enough to be hanging out with him afterwards, with a bunch of people. I shouldn't say just me. And we were talking about knees, and Charles Poliquin used to have this athlete development protocol for like basically
Poliquin step down. Is that where that came from?
Yeah, man, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's basically a Poliquin step down, and it's, you start with a flat foot, then you start with an elevated heel, then you start with nothing, then you start with just a raised heel, and you're only stepping down somewhere between like 3 and 4 inches. Like 2 to 4 inches is fine. And you do that, and if that's your bugaboo, that's going to help. So I would say that you found it, and I'm all for Ben Patrick's program. Sometimes I think it's maybe a little bit too aggressive, but it seems like you pull the right things from it. And I think that's phenomenal. So you do the backwards walking, you do the slant board work, which forces you to be pushed into your knees and stretch that tissue out, and also strengthen the muscle around the quad, and just kind of pump some fluid into the joint of your knee, which is what it needs. So I think that's fantastic. And I would kind of maintain that. And I wouldn't even think of that as a workout. I would think of that as like the same as brushing your teeth. Like, you just have to do that. And you have to get back to it after the hunting season, because that shit's going to stiffen up year after year after year. So,
so just to interject there, Matt. So as you know, I travel all the time. So I have like, I've got a little mini hotel workout, and I do those steps. That's where I do it. I do it every day.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
I noticed, like, when I first started doing some of those exercises off the slant board, because I'm doing them on a concrete floor at home, I would usually take a trekking pole, one pole, just to get my balance.
Yep.
And, I've been doing this now 3 years, and Blake knows too. I used to get killed coming downhill.
Yep.
With a loaded pack. And now, man, it's like no problem. The only thing 100%. That gets killed now is my toes are torpedoing into the front of my boots. But I don't know how to train for that. I got to get Adam on to talk about that. But sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all good. So, I mean, I think you're really doing it perfect, right? So if you kind of recap, I'd say Jan to April or Jan to beginning of May, depending on the year, I'd be going zone 2 fitness on that bike or the treadmill. I would take, like I said, like the stair climber, like more time for your knees stepping up is not necessarily what you need, right? Like, it'd be like if, yeah, I would just say that bike is going to give you better results without, not that the stepper has more wear on your knees, but you do have the tendency to not, it is a more of an impact than it is kind of cycling. And I don't think it won't build as much fitness as the stepper will. Stepper makes you sweat like a bastard, but that's about it. So that's a really good one. And then when you kind of naturally taper it down, I'd say I would be looking at best case, like platinum standard, gold standard, whatever you want to think is your best metal, is I would say from when you start to taper it down, you start to do more cardio, all your cardio is going to be hiking based stuff. So instead of doing more of the Bulgarian split squats, more knees over toes stuff, more quad based activity, you're going to benefit more from posterior chain strength. So hamstring strength. You're going to benefit way more from building a solid backside of the musculature than you are putting more onto the front. Because if you imagine a tent pole in the ground, something that's kind of bendy, and that quad muscle on the front is like really tight, and it's a tight bungee cord pulled, you're going to need the support of the one at the back to have like the most, sturdy structure straight up and down, right? So the same thing kind of goes for our body. So if you spent more time, even through the whole year, training way more kettlebell swings, kickstand, deadlifts, you buy one of those monkey foot things and just do literally.
I have them.
Yeah. They're sweet, man.
Those are,
holy shit.
Oh man, they're kill you.
They're hard. It's super hard. I think it's a fantastic home gym tool. I think everyone should have one, because the number one thing I see probably in clinic is people with just dog shit hamstrings. So it's really weak. So even people that are really strong, really weak hamstrings.
Well, I think too, like when you're working on hamstrings, like if you're laying, I don't know what the exercise is called, but if you're on a bench and you're doing the reverse curls, they fucking suck.
So
like it's
hard.
the worst exercise you could ever do. Like it's painful, and you're like, 100%. Why am I doing this? Right?
Why am I doing this?
Hamstrings. Yeah, I hear you.
So if you get if you're training more throughout the year in that posterior chain strength, by the time you go back to like hiking, then adding weight and all those things, man, you are laughing by the time hunting season comes around, because you're just going to build. You've got all that quad muscle, you got all that quad development from the zone 2 bike. You've been doing your knee work, you've been doing your general strength work, then you've been doing more hamstring stuff, and that's going to carry you through. And then you basically have from May to sheep hunting season that you're going to build like just quad strength through rucking. Like it's a no-brainer, but you're going to have taken less toll on your knees throughout the beginning of your strength training phase. It's just going to like prolong. It's going to most likely, depending on the quality of your knees and a bunch of other factors that go into it, previous injury history, you're going to do way better for longer with way less effort. And that's ultimately, I think, the goal, right? Like, we're not professional athletes. What's the least I can do and get away with it? I think that's the question we should all be asking. And I don't mean get away with it in the sense like I sneak through a sheep hunt and feel like shit. I mean, like I'm crushing it, and I'm not out there training 12 hours a week. You know what I mean? I think that's if you that's what you like and that's what you want to do, go for it. But that's too much for me, I would say. So that's kind of where I would sit. And then when I think you start great, right? Like I'd put that goal weight as probably like 80 pounds, I think, as a sheep hunter is a really nice goal weight. And that's the kind of weight I'd be rucking around with, come probably about 2 weeks before the season. And then I'd probably taper it back a little bit and just stay healthy and just feel good. But I'd be kind of working, and I'd be doing maybe 5 or 10 pound increments, depending on when you're starting. And again, I'd just be looking at trying to connect with like maybe a 3 hours a week, and trying to do maybe a 2 hour one, and then a couple other 30-minute goes. And maybe they're pretty high intensity by the end of that time. And ultimately we could plug and play with the intensity in there, But if you're just getting it in and that's your general program, you are 99% better than most. Like,
right
for
on.
sure.
Just one thing I want to ask and clarify. So when I said I can't remember if I said a Stairmaster or stair mill. It's a stair mill that I have.
Oh yeah.
So it's like
the revolving stairs.
So,
Again, I think those are a phenomenal piece of equipment. They're definitely pricey. I think that Zone 2 bike, sorry, I keep fucking that up. That Concept 2 bike is even better. Yeah. Like, it's unbelievable to hold a heart rate at. Like, and I'm not saying you have to sell all this stuff or whatever, but man, it is so nice to be on that Concept 2 bike, have that heart rate stay where it is. And there's so much good steady state programming that you can do with that bike that it's fantastic.
Cool. So that's my routine. Good stuff.
So I'd say that's to hunting season. Now, during hunting season, I'd say, you know, do you have to hit the gym and do it? No, that's your competition season. The things that I think about for guys who are maybe naturally stiff, or they have a lot of injury history, or once you're probably like kind of 50 plus, taking a little care of yourself with some basic things like some lacrosse ball work, some foam rolling, and some mobility, even if it's twice a week for 5 or 10 minutes, or once a day for 2 minutes when you're like around at home, even in camp, although it's a bit, it's a bit awkward, but like that kind of stuff is going to help you carry into December and start January better off than if you didn't. That's the only thing I would add.
I just purchased before I went down to California for 2 months, because of my travels, I guess, I don't know what happened, but my back was bugging me really bad. And I about 2 weeks before I left, went to the chiropractor and found out that I had a herniated disc and a pinched sciatica nerve. And so it was 2 months of recovery for me. And I was still going to the gym. So when I was down in California doing the gym thing, I found the only training I could do was basically strength training. And I had to be really careful. The butt machine, I couldn't use that as much as I wanted to. I couldn't use it. But, I was pretty careful with it. But one thing when I was there, so I basically hooked up with an older chiropractor, an older gentleman, and he was the only. I'd been to 3 chiropractors before I could find one that could actually pop that disc back in, and he was able to do it. And he said, why don't you just go, to the back store and buy it? You can buy a little mini Theragun now, what do you call it? Massage gun.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I ended up actually Best Buy, and I got this little portable one, USB thing.
Yep.
Man, I was able, my whole inside of my left leg was numb for a month and a half from my knee down. And I was actually able to almost massage and floss the nerves after a workout and in the evening and stuff. And just getting home 4 or 5 days ago now, all that pain is gone, but that thing's nice. And I'll tell you what, if I'm having a base camp somewhere on a hunting trip, that thing's going in the kit for everybody to use if you need it, man. It's like having a Swedish masseuse on your trip.
I've said that for a long time, right? Like sometimes you drive 20 hours, you get out of the truck and you start hiking. Like, you're fucking banged up, man. Like if you're starting a little bit banged up, like it's not bad to have the massage gun on the trip and you're just hitting the glutes and hitting the traps and like the pec, like whatever, right? Like it
feels so good. Yeah,
it feels great, right? Yeah, a lot of that stuff. Yeah. There's probably a whole episode of that we could talk about with how you can't pop a disc back in, but I'm not going to go there right now. But that's okay. We could talk about it another time. Mostly, I'm just 100% glad you're feeling better, man.
Yeah, I'm so much better now. So anyway, that's the old man portion. We're going to go to the young athlete now, which will probably be about 30-second routine because he kicks my ass everywhere we go. So Blake, tell him what you do.
Yeah. I guess my routine, I train
in January if you can.
Yeah. Okay. So January, well, I guess more generally speaking across the seasons, hunting season, I would consider kind of that's maintenance mode. I think it's kind of what you're saying. Yep. Honestly, I just basically hunt and go out hiking and stuff. So I don't hit the gym too much. Yep. Once December rolls around into January, I do a lot of I say a lot of strength training around then. It seems like I actually work with I have a lady who's sort of like a personal trainer. She does all my fitness programming, so
Cool.
she knows all about my hunting goals. That I got it all kind of plotted out. Like come August 1st, sheep season. Like this is kind of my expectations. I got to carry this much weight. I go about this far. I sort of map that stuff out, and so it's nice for me because I don't actually do a lot of the programming because that's always been one of my things that I frankly just suck at. But yeah, we do a lot of strength stuff. At least in her theory is get very strong, maybe some bulk over the winter. Come the warmer weather, I've at least been noticing, especially right now. I mean, it's a perfect example. I've been doing a lot of circuit stuff, still doing lifts, various squat stuff, presses, all kinds of stuff like that, but almost always ending with some kind of circuit, whether it be on, I noticed you said the Concept 2 bike, they have the Rogue Echo air bikes. So using stuff like that, rowing machines. And then, yeah, I would say that's probably right now. And then outside of that, I'm hiking and stuff. So I try to be pretty active, but the main thing I always deal with is I have very flat feet. And so I always wear orthotics. I even wear them in my hiking boots. If I'm not wearing them, I just have very painful knees, like all the time if I don't have my orthotics in.
Yep.
So I'm always trying to figure out ways to strengthen my knees. And actually just listening to you two talk here, the knees over toes, I originally discovered them before I got into this fitness training. And then I got into the fitness training. I sort of stepped away from it, but it's almost a good reminder I should get back to it because I've kind of in the last couple of months had little bouts of knee tightness coming back again. So that's been my main drawback with everything. One was just physically getting to a size where, because I'm a pretty thin guy, getting to a size where I could actually just carry the weight for the distance that I need. So I'm always looking for ways to just get stronger in that sense. But then second was making my knees a little more resilient so I don't have any problems in the backcountry.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, layering strength on your knees is what's going to ultimately help you the most, right? So I think that one of the number one things for you as like a pretty thin guy, right? Like you're pretty light, is it's one of the greatest assets that you'll have in you hit that kind of reward of being strong enough and then starting to get too heavy where now you're like, that you're just not used to being that heavy and it's harder. So I would say as long as you're remembering what true strength is, like true strength is 4 reps and down, right? So if a good bulk of your training, you're calling it strength work, but you're really working on a lot of hypertrophy, that's going to that'll start to build size. And you can still build size because like I said, you're pretty small, but as a certain point, like you don't just want to keep building size. What I'd want to do is keep building density. And so I'd really focus on those main lifts, squat, bench, dead, and then I'd be really working hard on trying to increase my 1 rep to 2 rep max kind of thing on like a nice linear progression throughout that December to May time. And then also doing your hypertrophy work with the accessory work that you're doing, lots of single leg. Anybody who's a little more thin, I always say a strong back is going to get you further than a big chest. So really like a big majority of what you're doing, I'd be doing a lot of Zercher work. I'd be doing a lot of seal rows. I'd be just trying to fuck your mid back up as much as possible because there's nothing better than having a strong mid back to carry a 90-pound pack or a 60-pound pack for forever. If you're buckling through the middle, your back goes to shit. The form goes to shit. Never mind that your knees didn't do enough knees over toes. It'll struggle. If you have a strong mid back, this is where you'll see guys kind of coming back to your point, Chuck, sometimes of like, how do you make it in the sheep mountains? And it's like, well, what's your other job? It's like, wow, I was a coastal logger for 25 years. You're like, oh yeah, never mind. You're fine. Like you've pulled chain, you've hooked chokers, you've cut this, you've worked long days, you've hiked up and down steep shit. Like you're fine, right? Like mostly they probably are like dealing with like a rough back and whatever else, right? So we're working more on those guys on like roughing out the around, like smoothing out the rough spots versus someone like you, Blake. I'm like, you don't have any rough spots. All we can do is just like think about you in 10 years and make you an absolute, like make you fucking the Ivan Drago of you know, Rocky IV reference there of like of sheep hunting, right? And that, in my opinion, that is like the longevity look. Like strength takes, how old are you again, man? Sorry?
Yeah, I'm 28.
28. Like really, when you're in your mid 30s, like you're going to be, if you just keep chipping away, you'll be so strong when you're in your mid 30s. If you just stay consistent with it and keep building year after year, that then by the time you're basic, not to say that I'm, you know, the shining example of anything, but I never need to get like any stronger than what I am now for anything hunting related. You know what I mean? If I'm trying to get stronger, it's just purely because it's something that I do enjoy. But when you get to a certain level, like when I work with like, you know, a couple of guys I've worked with who are like pro golfers, once we can kind of get this like 1.5 times body weight squat for a few reps, what
You're
like
there.
No more is needed. Like it's just risk reward. Like you don't need to pull 550 off the ground to be a good sheep hunter unless you want to powerlift. You know what I mean? And the risk reward curve there is crazy. So really building your mid back would be my number one thing for guys who are a little more thin. And then like really just staying consistent and remembering what true strength work is, 4 reps and down, and really hammering that. You're never going to have a problem just kind of how light you are with like how your cardio is, as long as you do it. I would say that just remembering that you don't need to feel like you're like Lauren's really bad for this. Lauren Trousdale, who's like a, you know, another brother to me. So like he'll always be like, this zone 2 stuff, am I even doing anything? Because in Lauren's mind, he needs to feel like he's working out. Like he needs to feel a little dicked after a session. And that's well and good, but that's to kind of do with your high intensity training and I find that fun. And you're like, yeah, that was sweet. But that zone 2 stuff, man, that's where I'm listening to a book, I'm watching a show, I'm having a conversation. That's where that can live, right? And that's just kind of the boring work that gets put in on the side. That's a different gear, because you got to remember when we're training, and I talk about this all the time, training is just a transmission, right? Like you want to be training all different gears. If you're always training the third gear, like 140, 150 beats a minute with your lifting, with your high intensity, with your hiking, with your running, with your, you know, rogue bike, with your stair stepper, like all of those things, you're always third gear. There's no variation of that. And that gear wears out real quick. And it also it's not really good for everything. It's like an El Camino. It's kind of useless for a car and it's completely useless for a truck. So if we're thinking like how to vary your training, it's remembering that varying your training now is going to be, and feeling what that's like and building a good base is going to be super important for you. Then the thing I would say, if you've got, so I'll just say this, flat feet don't matter at all. Like it doesn't matter if you're fucking the imprint on the ground that you leave is like a Kleenex box. What only matters is that if your foot, and it's again hard to kind of look at this, and we can do another episode on your back, on your feet, like all that stuff. What we can really look at is if your foot on the ground is someone just you know, I do love a good El Camino. I'm sorry, it's just not a great combo vehicle. I should have said Subaru Baja. No one likes those things. So
yeah.
Anyway, so like if your foot's on the ground and you're standing there and it is like a pancake, just flat, and you're holding it there, and you kind of unlock your knee and you squat down a little bit, and nothing, your ankle doesn't roll in, it's not rolled in to start, you can pick your foot up and keep the support. You don't need to necessarily create an arch. In fact, I'd rather have a flat foot than a super high arch, in my opinion. But if you're sitting there and you're stable as all can be there, you don't need an orthotic. If you pick that foot up and your foot collapses in your ankle bone, and you can see this when you stand, if you kind of look in a mirror, you video it, you can send me a video of this if you want. Just stand there on one foot. I think I did this with you, Blake. Sorry, Chuck. So like, when
yes, you did.
Me with an injury. If you're standing there and you collapse to the inside, I'm going to teach you how to pick that foot up, create tension through those muscles. And then we need to work on that as something that's like going to carry you forward, because I think orthotics are totally fine, right? And Adam will agree with me on this for sure. Is orthotics are just a tool, right? And they're a tool that you want to have, but they're also a tool that you want to, if you can, train your way out of. And there's sometimes where you're like, if you're around the house and it's day to day and you don't need them, but say actually, it's completely backwards. My bad. If around the house is when I would say you wouldn't need them in your day-to-day shoes, maybe when you need them is kind of getting out into some of these like avenues where you're like, I'm going to be on my feet for like 25,000 steps a day. And you're just not tired. And like your foot gets tired and those muscles get tired and they start to collapse to the inside. And that's when a problem gets created. So one of the things that I think is super helpful is just understanding what the mechanics are and then how to train them, and then actually training your foot strength and lower leg mechanics. Because if you just go into it and you're like, I'm going to hammer the knees over toes stuff, but you've got really poor mechanics and contact to the ground, that's going to be a big problem, because you're just going to create a poor biomechanical force coming up to the knee, and then maybe potentially like a hip problem down the line, and so on and so forth. And this is where everybody starts to talk about like, once I hit 30, man, it all started to go downhill. And it's like, not really. It's that you just didn't have to pay attention to the mechanics that you had till that point. So one of the things I would say is much like Chuck needs to kind of pay attention to his knees, fixing and really learning about your feet and how to make them stronger. And shoot me a message, man. I've got tons of like just accounts for you to follow for this kind of stuff. And then obviously you can use me as much as you want. Is fixing that stuff. If that's your weak spot, dude, having feet that are active and strong and stable, that means a lot of good health for your knees and back and hips and all that stuff. Like it's good for lifting, it's good for hunting, it's good for day to day, it's good for running. Versus when I have someone who comes in, they're 48 years old, they're in good shape, but they just have have really poor mechanics through the lower legs, and they just constantly have had knee pain for 15 years on and off. Sometimes it's crazy. They pick it up real quick and they're like, dude, how is this? This has been the problem that I've had for like 15 years. Like, how is this an issue that I just had to learn how to control my foot? They do it over a couple months and boom, they're better. Right. So, it's a really fun process that I would say that's the spot that I would work on if I were you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I appreciate the info. I had a couple of quick follow-ups actually from what you were saying. So the question number one was, you said 4 reps and down, you were talking about strength training. I actually would love a little bit of more of an explainer on what you mean by that specifically.
Sure. As soon as you start to feel burn in a muscle, you've gone past strength. Now, will you you're starting to move into more hypertrophy. Now, will you get stronger? Yes, 100%. But if you're looking to not get any heavier and just create density, then like some of the powerlifters I've worked with who are like pretty small, and they're like, you go to move their leg and it's just like, you're like, holy shit, like this is heavy. Like, oh my, this is a heavy appendage that I'm holding in my hands right now. That's like, that sounded worse than it did, but nonetheless,
it did. Yeah. We're going to clip that for Instagram.
Got to clip that for sure. Yeah. Like when I picked like my friend Logan, he's like, God, I think at the time he was like maybe an 89 kilo lifter, squatted like 300 kilos, 660 pounds, like pretty legendary stuff, like a super, super impressive guy. And when you pick his leg up, I worked on him a handful of times, man, it's just dense and heavy. Now he doesn't want to do a ton of hypertrophy work because he's going to gain size, right? And if he wants to go up weight classes and all that stuff, then that's different, right? And if you want to add size, that's also different. But when we're talking about true strength, it is high weight, low repetitions, big breaks in between. That's what's going to train like true strength versus and create that density in the tissue versus something along the lines of like, I'm going to do like 4 sets of 8 or 3 sets of 12 to 15. If you're truly going heavy enough that it's hard enough there, 70% and up of a 1 rep max, that is going to be like straight hypertrophy. It's also going to require a lot of repair from the muscle. Which is going to lead to needing like a lot more on the nutrition and sleep and recovery side of things. So working that the big lifts, squat, bench, dead, and press, you know, are, and with the whatever variation you use of those, 4 reps and down, right? Like I say, 4 sets, like 3 to 4 sets, 3 to 4 reps, 3 to 4 minutes of rest. Like that is it. And then the linear progression, you put a bookmark on that at the end of May, you test your 1 rep maxes, you write those down. And then really perfect world, and I've talked about this a bunch of times, perfect world, you're trying to lift maybe 70 to 80% of those, maybe once a week the rest of the year, in a perfect world, because then you'll come back in January and man, you'll be able to like just crush those 1 rep maxes the next year. And then the next year you'll do the same and the same and the same until you get to this point where you're like, that's as strong as I need to get. Like it's too heavy. It hurts. I maybe tweak my back. I mean, you're like, I'm good with like wherever I kind of got to. And if I want to put more strength in, I'm going to have to change my training. And you got to remember, what is the goal? Do you want to be a power lifter or do you want to hunt? So, the risk reward there isn't really worth it. So then I would get more of, for you, I would be focusing on strength and creating that density. And then I'd focus more on my accessory work for the hypertrophy stuff, which is going to be lower weight, still getting the gain of like muscular size, but not as much wear and tear on your body as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Interesting.
That's awesome.
Okay. And then on the feet stuff, it was very interesting to hear you say that, because when I was younger, I had orthotics because I got knee pain, and I was told that was the solution. So we had them for a while. Then I went through a lot of years where I didn't have it, but that was also when I wasn't hunting as backcountry hunting like we were. And then I got introduced to backcountry hunting probably 7 years ago, maybe. And that's when I started really finding my knees just getting in rough shape. And so my sort of perspective on it has always been like, I don't like having things that I have to have as like reliant, you know, like the orthotics. Yeah, exactly. And so as soon as I started getting knee pain, I was just had to look in the mirror a bit and be like, I think it's because my legs are just honestly not that strong enough. It's like, that was like my one perspective. And so that took me down the journey of getting in a little bit more stronger, quite frankly. And my theory was, let's just strengthen all the muscles around the knees as best as I could, and then see how it does. And I think that's made some strides, but I guess I hadn't thought of it at the same way with the feet so much. And I would love to get out of having to rely on orthotics, because one thing that is sort of like a subtle pain in the butt for me is every time I put them in my boots and we go on these backcountry hunts, like the orthotics are never perfectly matched up in the boot. And so if you're side hilling for a while or something, it's like the amount of blisters and like foot stuff that I deal with is just, it makes me almost not want to have them. And so it'd be ideal. So I guess what you're saying is focus on, like, there's things I can do just to strengthen the foot to move out of orthotics, then would be an idea, right?
Yeah, man. And to be perfectly honest, like, I doubt it's a lot to do with your orthotic why you get blisters. It's probably to do with the fact that you don't have a very strong foot. And a little bit like what you were talking about there too, Chuck, is that the reason your feet hammer into the end of your boot is that you probably don't quite understand how to use your foot like a hand and like squeeze into the bottom of your boot to stop it fucking smashing into the end. And then the same thing with you, Blake, is that when you're side hilling, you need to have so much lower leg strength. Like, and I don't mean like, look at my 1 rep max toe raise. I mean like that straight up endurance and that durability of like how to hold your foot constantly and like just constantly work on kind of like how your foot needs to stay stable so it's not sliding around in your boot more and more. The amount of guys that I end up have seen over the years that are like, oh man, I always get a blister right here. It's usually never to do with their boot, and it's usually to do with the biomechanics and strength of their foot. Could be on a side hill, could be on, after I've done X amount of days, could be like any number of things, right? And then the amount of guys that if they go, that's their first hunt, and they then go, my second hunt, I don't get any blisters. I broke my boots in. That's probably not it. It's probably your feet actually got stronger from all the work. Foot, lower leg, basically from the knee down, actually got stronger, and you have better support to kind of move along in the backcountry, and you're no longer kind of getting bullied by the terrain and then your boots rubbing around on your foot, right? So there's a lot to that really does like the best blister prevention, other than, you know, Leukotape's great, but is really having a strong, stable foot. And there's all sorts of ways you can kind of trick this as well a little bit. Like, if you get really into rock climbing in the off season and you spend a bunch of time in the climbing gym and you get really good on those tiny little footholds, it's good for you, man. Like, yeah, your foot's jammed into a little boot or like a little shoe and stuff, but it's so good for your lower leg to be really good on those holds. To really use your legs is phenomenal. There's like all sorts of, like I said, little stuff like that. And then just basic things that we can work on. Walking along a dowel for a couple minutes every night when you're watching a hockey game just kind of like starts to grip your foot to the dowel. And if it's really painful, that's probably another sign that your feet are probably in that great of shape. Yeah, all sorts of little things like that that don't really feel like I'm doing foot stuff, which is, you know, like boring, but it's super helpful.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks. That definitely gave me a few ideas for sure.
Yeah, man. Yeah, reach out anytime, and I've got like no end of ideas and no end of, you know, good accounts on people I really trust and some stuff I've looked to on this as well.
Awesome, I will.
Right on. Well, that was great, Matt. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, man.
I think what we'll do is we're going to switch gears a little bit. How's
Sure.
our time, Blake? Where are we at? It must be over an hour now, right?
We're about an hour 15.
Perfect. So we're going to switch gears and we're going to head north a little bit here. So last year you had a very special trip and a very, very special event. Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks.
You recently unpacked that trip with our buddy Adam. So we're not going to relive it, but maybe without too much duplication, for those that don't know, maybe just give us a short overview of what transpired last year for you and Sonia.
Yeah. So got to do trip of a lifetime. Obviously with my partner, my wife Sonia, now wife Sonia. We got engaged in Spain in 2021 and started thinking about the wedding, and elopement was probably the only way we were really going to do it. And started to throw a bunch of ideas around. And then I came up with this one that was a bit asinine, and which was, maybe I was like, maybe I could talk to Ben, who could talk to Tavis. Maybe we could double up on a caribou hunt there, and Ben could do our nuptials kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It's like, nah, that's kind of crazy. And I was like, well, you know what? Why don't we just leave it in fate's hands and, see what happens? And so Ben asked Tavis and he was like, that's pretty cool. Yeah, let's see if we can make it work. So we end up going up to Arctic Red and met Ben up there. And then the first night we flew into a lake and then got married at we did our ceremony, I should say. We did it at 10 o'clock at night, which was still the middle of the day up there in August. And exactly. And then had an absolutely beautiful night, and then changed out of my suit and Sonia's wedding dress and Ben's black suit and kind of the bowler tie and all the things. And we ended up, glassing caribou for the evening and glassing sheep and stuff. And then
crazy.
Was pretty cool. So we did then plan to do 14 days of backpack hunting after that for a couple caribou for Sonia and myself. And then Ben had the opportunity, because it's his last time at Arctic Red with him buying Iron North, able to go up to, he was, great. Tavis was gracious enough, said, hey, if you find something special for a ram, you can take it. And then ended up, didn't really, there's been a couple of hard winters up there. I think a lot of people know for doll sheep, they're doing a lot better now, but some of the oldest ones were gone. And I think as an outfitter, Ben's understands that game pretty hard now, that it's not just taking any ram, and that's one a client could have. So if it's kind of a special one, I think it would have been on, but we found a pretty special caribou for him anyways at I think it scored about 425. So we had about end up 12 days, I think, and 3 caribou down and about 160 kilometers of hiking, and it was absolutely fabulous. And it's not easy, obviously, but if anybody has the opportunity to get up into the Mackenzie Mountains at any point in time, pretty special place, man. And obviously a lot of history there that's not lost on me. And it's still very surreal to even talk about it. So we had kind of the trip of a lifetime, and I mean, you know, the worst thing is that just makes me want to go back as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's incredible. On a related note, I saw Taylor had a question in the chat, so I feel like I should ask it. He was going to ask you, are you guys planning on ever going back for any of the big game hunts? I mean, it is for a lot of people a once in a lifetime experience, and you two sort of got the pinnacle experience, I would say, that you could ever dream of. But is it already starting to come back in your mind?
Yeah, I think you know, if all there's a few things that need to fall into place here, but next year probably I think Sonny and I are gonna go and we're gonna move to the Yukon to work at I'm gonna guide at Iron North for a couple months, and then Sonia will be in camp as well, and then with the beauty of Starlink, she can kind of work and then do some work around camp, and we'll bring everything up, and yeah, it'll be a good time. And so hopefully I'll be up there, not hunting for myself, but hopefully I'll be up guiding at Iron North next year for a couple months. So I'm pretty excited about that, to be honest. But yeah, next year we'll have to end up seeing, but that's going to be pretty special as well.
So that's going to be 2025. You guys are going to be up there?
That's the plan right now. Yeah, lots of things can change, but that's kind of what we're looking for. And because you plan those hunts out, Ben, you know, if I commit and Ben's selling those hunts, you know, like I like to try and be true to my word. So yeah,
for sure. So well, what a great experience, man. I heard the whole blown out podcast with Adam. It was a great experience, man. I can only imagine. Congratulations to both of you guys again.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thank you.
So let's chat a little bit about your foray into guiding. I mean, most chiropractors, physical therapists, trainers, whatever you want to call yourself,
sure,
you know, coffee entrepreneurs, they don't really end up guiding. So tell us, how did this all come about? Yeah,
man. Yeah, I mean, I think just I think there's definitely a couple ways to get into this. It's you either start out, and I think you have to be from Rocky Mountain House to be a guide. I think anybody you know, I think 3/4 of the population,
of them are.
Yeah, from Rocky Mountain House are all guides. I mean, I honestly didn't even know it was a job. You know, like not that long ago. You know what I mean? 2017, sure. I think I found out it was a job. So, and then obviously started hunting after that, and I was like, man, this is pretty cool. And I think it marries up well with how am I going to say this? It marries it up well with I love helping people achieve a goal. It's why I think I'm, you know, not too bad at the job I've picked, and I think that's just another place to do it, right? And to be, you know, good with clients and get to see some pretty special stuff and learn a lot. And you also get to, you know, I think you also do, depending on how much you hunt, I think I can really condense a lot of knowledge down into a really small time frame, and hopefully I can catch up to some of the people I really look up to as absolutely fantastic hunters. So that's kind of like, I think, you know, twofold. I think it's all, people are like, oh man, you get to get paid to do your hobby. And I'm like, always be careful of that, because all of a sudden, once you get paid to do your hobby, it cannot be a hobby anymore, and you can start to hate it. So yeah, definitely one of those things that I was given the opportunity to spot some sheep with Ben, and he was like, he's like, you did fantastic. And, you know, the biggest thing for him is that you need a guide who maybe isn't, you know, like myself. And I will say this, like, I'm certainly not the best hunter in the world, but I'm pretty good with people. And I think I represent his business well. And when you're out there with someone for 8 days, you know, what's one of the best things that can happen is regardless if you kill or whatever ends up happening, you know, if they're like, man, that guy was great and it was a really cool experience and I had a lot of fun, you know, for the most part, people are gonna want to come back. So that's, I think he just kind of took a chance on me being new, and we spent a lot of time together anyways. So I think he had just, you know, faith in my ability, and I'm extremely grateful for him giving me a crack and getting a little bit. I do a little bit more each year, you know, as I kind of learn a little more, and I bite off a little more, and I'm offered a little more. I do a little more, and yeah, this year I'm really excited to. I'll probably end up having somewhere between maybe like 6 and like 6 and 8 clients, I think, this year for mule deer, sheep, and helping Ben with sheep again, and then bear. So yeah, that's going to be a good amount of guiding, I think, this year, and I'll really get a good shake on see if it's going to be something that I'm going to stick with for quite a while, which I can't see why not.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for Ben's trust, right? He sees things in you that he knows will be valuable assets, and those assets are the kind of asset that you cannot train or instill into people very well, and that's people skills, you know, just personality, temper, all of those things. But what you can instill from someone like Ben, who's an absolute killer, is hunting skills, technique, tactics, all of those things. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, I've never met Ben, but I've followed him for years and loved what he used to do on his YouTube stuff. And I know he's super busy, and I think you definitely paired up with a great guy. And then, like I said, you've got all the other guys on that list of, you know, you got a lot of brains to pick there too, right? So that's great.
Totally. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun, and again, quite a surreal experience. I think it was in the Wind and the Wolves film where, you know, I look back and it's always cringy seeing yourself on film sometimes in the interviews, right?
Yeah.
But you kind of look back and you're like, I think I did say something to the thing of like, man, like hunting guide, like, is this something I'm maybe going to do? And I didn't even know it was really a career until like a couple years ago or something along those lines. And, you know, I think Adam and I just talked about this on the podcast. He's like, yeah, Maddie, he's like, you know, I wasn't sure like how much you'd like it. And if you did, you know, I knew you were going to jump in with both feet, but like, I didn't know that it was going to be like everything, you know what I mean? Like your whole year and life starts to push and kind of revolve around this, you know? And I was like, yeah, man, I said, I said, I still say this, right? I'm like, I don't know whether to thank you or curse you. Either way is because now it's like this addiction and sickness that's definitely set in.
Oh yes, we know the feeling, man. It's definitely a sickness, but it's a good one. I'd rather be sick with this hunting bug than anything else, man. So
yeah,
that's really cool.
Things out there.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing how that pans out for you, and
Thanks,
we're going to get you back on more than once here to get you back on the show.
Oh, I can't wait.
Well, I'm going through my list of stuff, and there's one more pretty important thing that we need to talk about, and that's coffee, brother. Let's hear it. How did this project evolve? Where did it start?
Yeah. Geez. I mean, it started probably like, I don't know. It maybe started like 2019 where I started drinking instant coffee.
Yeah. You and I chatted about this afternoon.
Yeah. Where I started drinking instant coffee in the backcountry and being like, this is dog shit. So, you know, and then it turned into like smaller hunts. I'd bring my hand grinder and my French press, and, you know, and really what it is just trying to not drink. I enjoy, I mean, like, you know, that's a wine cellar right there with a few hundred bottles in it. There's maybe 85 bottles of whiskey there. Like, then that's not a sort of a brag. That's on like, I love flavor. I love different flavors. I love wine. I love whiskey. I love beer. I love food, and I love coffee. And it's just, you know, I don't drink a lot, but I definitely, when I do, I really want to enjoy something, or I want to drink Pilsner. So either or, but nonetheless. And it's, it really,
someone already made that, Matt.
Yeah, exactly. I just go with what they've got. Yeah. So really with coffee, I was like, for years now, every time I talk to anybody, we're always like, you found any good freeze-dried coffee? You found any good instant? No. And then the bags started coming out, and those are stupid. I don't like steeping. And then the small pour overs came out, and you're like pouring your jet boil in, and it takes you like 5 minutes. And again, they're not very good. I'm like, this is stale coffee. This isn't good. So I'm like, I don't know. And then I just kept whining about it essentially. And then last year, I was like to my friend Dan, who has been in coffee for about 18 years. I was like, how is this is this doable? Like, I'm going to buy some beans. I'm going to extract the coffee. And then, because the way that most coffee is done, like the Starbucks Via packs, they micro grind it and then freeze dry it and put it in. And what that really does is it kind of, it's like making a smoothie, except you got the orange peel and the banana peel in there. you know, and you're like,
Okay.
yeah, it's a smoothie, but like, it's not very good. But
Something else. Yeah.
if there's no other way, okay. So that's essentially how that stuff gets made. And you get way better yields on it, right? Like, I don't know the exact numbers, but if you get 500 pounds of green bean coffee, roast it, and it you know, you've got that, I bet it comes out as like not far off because you're using the whole bean. Maybe you lose a little bit, but then you micro grind that down, you freeze dry it, and then that's what dissolves in your coffee. Hence the bitterness of an over roasted shitty cup of coffee, hence most coffee. But
Yep.
so then, you know, I was like, well, Dan, what can we do about this? Is there anything to do? So we started kind of like playing around, got some, I really liked this one bean that he uses from Guatemala. And I said, I'd like to use that one. I think it can hold up to the coffee market that I think I know in this community is I want a dark cup of coffee that isn't bitter, isn't burnt, has some flavor. That's kind of like what people want. And I think to start out with anyways. And he was like, yeah, let's see what we can do. So then we ended up using, you know, found this other guy doing this. I call him the mad scientist. He's in Alberta. And he has this crazy extraction freeze drying process that he's one of the only guys in North America doing it right now. And in my opinion, I bet you he's going to get bought out by maybe Starbucks or who knows, but there's going to be, someone's going to buy him out for a shit pile of money. To just have that proprietary property that like no one else has figured out how to use yet. So people have tried and they just don't make the yields well enough. So he's on his fourth version. I got to meet him a little while ago and he's an interesting cat. And I do really like him. And I hope he keeps doing it because it's honestly the backbone of our business. So I try and support him as much as possible. But where I think we really do make a difference is we have a really good bean and we have an amazing roaster, you know, Dan. And then we get coffee's got this freshness window. Like once you roast coffee, it sits for about 7 or 8 days and then it's about as fresh. And that's when you want to drink it. And it's good for maybe different opinions, but call it 40 days. So we get our coffee shipped to us green, roasted, sent to Alberta all within that time. And within that like 30-day window, it is freeze dried. It is extracted and roasted. So we're not taking that whole bean. We're kind of using Ben's crazy method of how he kind of like pressurizes water and then almost like extracts that coffee from it. And then from there, that's what's freeze dried. So our yield isn't amazing. Like, so we get 350 pounds of green bean coffee turns into about 78 pounds of his instant coffee. Hence why, you know, like it is $4 per pack, which is the same as a cup of coffee from the store. But as you know, most people have told us it's better than, a lot of people say it's better than what they drink at home. So you're not really like, it's not bad for instant. Like all the shows I've been to and all the stuff, like there are some people that are like, yeah, it's okay. And that's just flavor. Like you could take like a $6,000 bottle of wine, you know, that someone's, look at this, and they're like, someone smells it like, oh, that's not for me. It's just flavor and it's just taste. So like my feelings aren't hurt if it's not your favorite coffee. But I think right now it's definitely, I don't drink a lot of it because I'm trying to make all my money back on it for now. But every now and then I'll have a cup for like Instagram or something like that. And I'm like, fuck, this is really good. So I am really excited to drink it this season. And we've got some cool partnerships. Like obviously you and I are talking, Chuck, about how you know, you and I can support each other. And then obviously with like Silver Core Outdoors, and I've got some other stuff going on with Wilderness Athlete in the States. We're just kind of navigating the waters of the FDA right now, which is always exciting. And yeah, man, I just honestly just want to provide, I think the ritual of coffee in the morning is important. And I want people to have a smile on their face when they're drinking it. So I'm super excited.
Yeah. I mean, you and I chatted briefly about this afternoon. So given my travel schedule and you know, most of my life, outside of years in hotel rooms, I spend an awful lot of time in Europe and in Netherlands in particular. And that's just something like I'm so programmed to having a good cup of coffee in the morning. And I like to have a couple of cups, like healthy cups, 8-10 ounce cups. Like give me two good cup loads, go for a good breakfast and have 3 maybe. Yeah. And that's just something that's voided and missing. Right. And even on an airplane, I spend a lot of time on airplanes and it's like, I got now, and so I got the package today. I ordered some, and it was shipped so quick. Got it within like 2 days. I'm leaving tomorrow for a Caribbean trip for work, and I'm stuffing my backpack's going to have This Is Coffee. It's going to have Wilderness Athlete, Energy and Focus, because I'll take one of those in the afternoon and hydrate and recover for, if I don't eat or whatever. I like to have that in the evening and stuff. But yeah, I'm excited just because I'm taking it with me. And then in another week, I'm off to Africa for my hunt.
Yeah.
I'm going to I'll probably go through. Yeah. And $4 is $4. I pay $4 for a cup full of cow piss in some of these restaurants. It's like, this is awful.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
So, I'm very excited. Very excited for you,
thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate the support and everything. Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story here too. I was down at Western Hunt Expo selling hunts for Iron North and Arcadia this year, and chatting with the Wilderness Athlete boys, because I write for Western Hunter magazine, which I'm honestly extremely honored to be a part of that group with Western Hunter, Wilderness Athlete, and Outdoorsman. And so anyways, I was flying down. It was way down. It was way down. I was flying. She comes by and it's in the morning, and honestly, I kind of wanted to order a scotch because the coffee's such dog shit on the plane, but I was like, no, Matt, it's too early. And I was like, oh man, I was like, nah, I'll just have water. Like, it's not that long of a flight. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, I've got coffee in my bag, of course. So I opened my bag up, kind of pulled one out, and I had my I had my little Yeti tumbler. And I said, hey, could you just fill this up about 2/3 full of hot water? She says, sure. So she pours hot water in there. And, I'm sitting middle seat on a, economy flight, which I feel like I'm not getting any bigger. And I feel like these seats are getting smaller. So this guy's shoulder to shoulder with me. I kind of shake the pack, open it up, pour it in there, stir it around a little. And you can kind of get this guy's kind of like, I can feel him looking over my shoulder. And then he's like, he pulls his headphone back and he's like, that smells good. What is that? And I was like, honestly, this is new like instant coffee company called This Is Coffee. I turn over, there's the barcode, and he kind of is looking at it, and he's just, or their QR code, I should say. And he looks at the QR code, he kind of flashes on his phone, he's connected to the Wi-Fi, boom, hits the button. He's like, this looks cool. Orders 5 right there. I was like, well, that's pretty sweet. And then so anyways, I was like, he's looking at the Instagram and he's like, is this you? And I'm like, it is. Yeah, it is me. And he's like, that's a sneaky way to order some coffee. I said, man, my marketing plan does not include flying around the country, maybe having a guy order 5 packs of coffee. He's like, yeah, fair enough. So I gave him the packs of coffee, and away we went. So, and then Nolan Osborne, he's heading to Ontario. I think it was this morning or maybe yesterday. I can't even remember. And he shoots me this message, and it's the This Is Coffee pack, and it's next to a cup of coffee. And he's just like, this is a game changer, because the coffee on flights is just shit. And
it's the worst. It's the worst.
It's the worst. And I get it. There's just margins and whatever. And, I mean, that's a whole other question of shareholders making money and us having terrible coffee. But, one of the things actually that I was trying to kind of work on, Dan is more working on it than I am, is we're trying to talk to Air Canada actually about it'd be so easy to have this coffee on board, wholesale sell it to them, and then they could sell it as an upcharge. They'd sell it for like $6 a coffee. And if it's good and people want, it's like a premium spirit, right? Premium beer, whatever. If they want to have it on their flights, I mean, I think I would pay for it. Like, I'd pay $5. I'd pay $5.50 for a cup of this in the morning, coming back from Arizona, Scottsdale, after having too many good times on a bachelor party, being like, I just need a good cup of coffee right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's a no-brainer. So anyways, if anyone can help me out with that, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, I'm super elite on Air Canada. Almost at the 1 million mile mark.
Nice.
And I'm going to be your biggest salesman, as this tumbler's coming with me. And your coffee's coming with me, and I'll be waving it around with the open lid so everybody can smell it. And you got to get me on commission, brother. That'll work.
100%, man. 100%. We can definitely work something out.
I know. Well, that's awesome. We're very excited for you. It's a super cool project, and there's going to be lots of info on This Is Coffee floating around on Spike Camp. It's like, officially, it is our coffee. It's Spike Camp official coffee. We're going to make it happen, buddy.
I appreciate
Absolutely.
That. Yeah.
there's a little thing we like to do at the end of these interviews is sort of a little rapid fire question period. I made a few, but I forgot one, and I'm gonna ask it first.
Hit me.
Who did you toss out of an airplane this week?
Who did I toss out of an airplane this week?
Or last week? It was an Instagram. Somebody jumped out of a perfectly good aircraft.
Oh my God. Yeah, man.
You better know about this, buddy.
Cool. This is one of the coolest things. Yeah. Last weekend, my mom turned 73, and so my Sonia and I surprised her. Her husband, Neil, he called me. He said, "Hey, I think Sue, I want Sue to go skydiving." And I said, "That's fucking awesome. Let's do it." And so he planned the whole thing up. I showed up. Sonia and I kind of headed down to the island on a Friday, showed up at the house, caught the 805 ferry because, BC ferries and whatever, caught the 805 ferry, popped over there, ended up, Neil left the front door unlocked. And so we walked in, and I banged on her bedroom door, and I think if that didn't kill her, the skydiving was going to be fine, because she was like, who's there? And I was like, if this was America, I'd be shot through the door for sure. So, and I was like, Mom, it's me. And she's like, what are you doing here? So she thought that was this big surprise. And then the next day, I was like, hey, I got some things to do. I have a few people to see. You guys are going to this RV show anyways. I said, I'll see you back here for lunch, or we'll meet at the Lanceville pub or something. And then, so we kind of beetle bopped around a little bit. And I feel like maybe she was a little bit like, oh, okay. Well, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
And then so we showed up at the back at Vancouver Island Skydive, and the video's on my Instagram if you want to see it. But surprised her with awesome. with a skydive, and dude, there was no hesitation. Yep, in there, ready. She like skipped out of her training. They're like, you're not done your training yet. She's like, oh shit. So she's like, when's the van taking me? Like, let's go. And she handled it like a champ, man. It was awesome. It was really cool. I will say you see her hop out at 10,000 feet, and then you see the reserve, kind of the initial slowdown shoot that takes them from about 300 kilometers an hour to 200. And you're kind of like, man, if this next chute doesn't open, that's it. Oops. And so like, it's a morbid thought, but you can't not make it. And I was like, oh, holy shit, what have we done? And so finally that chute pops open, and I was like, oh, okay. And then you're getting like pretty antsy because the landing, like if I don't know,
or she breaks a leg or
well, like I wasn't worried so much about that. I was more worried like, what if he like randomly passes out? Like, this is a pro. Like, why would I be worried about that? But you're like, that's the part that you're like, oh shit. So anyways, she did great, and she was super fired up, and it was honestly a fantastic day. Yeah. Thank you for asking about that.
Oh, it was a really good video on Instagram. I started laughing my ass off, and I'll just say this, Matt, there's definitely a genetic connection between the skydiving and you getting in the hunting space. So I know where you get that. Hell yeah, I'm in, buddy. That's where you got it from. You got it from your mother. So that's so cool. For sure. She looks like she looks like a party. That's awesome.
She's a badass, man. And it's so funny. She's this 5'4" tiny little British woman, but I mean, she was, I looked up to her a lot growing up, and you only realize these things as you get a little older in life. But yeah, I wouldn't be anywhere without my mom for sure.
Nice. Wow. That's cool. All right. Next question. I know the answer, but we're going to ask it anyway. Favorite hunt so far in your career?
I mean, the NWT. Yeah, I mean, that's probably it, but there's bits and pieces, man, of a lot of different stuff. The first elk bugle I heard, in that Beyond the Kill series, West Kootenays. The first time I found a 6x6 bull myself. There's all these little bits and pieces that it's kind of like if you golf and you're like just having a shit round, then you play the last few holes pretty well. You're like, yes, But I think overall that Northwest Territories, Arctic Red. I mean, that's
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
That's tough to beat. Man. Yeah,
it's tough to be. Yeah, like you might as well start at the finish line and work your way back, because that's really it. But
my
well
favorites, I will say my favorite stock was the second goat I killed. That was with Lauren. That was incredible. It was like this 6-hour kind of stalk from camp in the snow. Track this goat and smash this nice goat, with a couple guys back in camp watching us through the spotters, and then me being with, maybe almost my main hunting partner at this point in Lauren Trousdell, and just phenomenal, man, to have him, obviously capturing some cool photos, and then to experience that.
Sure.
Like it was such an epic bunch of hours there that that'll be pretty tough to be beaten for sure.
Right on. Yeah, no doubt. All right, next one. What's your favorite piece of gear?
My stove. I think like coffee, not because of the this is coffee thing, but that is obviously part of it. But my stove is like, I think making coffee, making water, making food, I have a little frying pan that sometimes I make a little quesadilla on for a little treat or something like that, frying up some back straps or some tendies. I think my stove is like the piece of gear that I will never be the guy who doesn't have a stove on a hunt.
So this is a quote of mine that I kind of use in my own mind every day. I call the stove the morale machine.
Yes, man. Right? That's exactly it, dude. Like it's
right.
That's it. It's the morale machine, man.
Yeah, for sure. You got that meal, or you got the coffee, or it's ramen or hot chocolate. Whatever. It starts with the stove. It absolutely does.
It's just this break in the monotony of like, grinding and being like, let's sit down and have a warm Ichiban, a couple pieces of pepperoni, and then let's get back to it. And you're like, yes.
Absolutely. Okay, last one. Favorite game dish?
Ooh, yeah, great one.
It's also a hard one to answer.
Yeah, so I think that's, I'm not going to there is nothing like tendies back, like right out of an animal on the mountain. Like I've never recreated a meal that's maybe better than that. That's just like literally sliced up and eaten right there, damn near raw, right? Like there's something about that, and I'm so glad that Sonia got to experience that this year with the caribou that we killed up there. Is that like just you're like, yeah, this can't be recreated, even though you have amazing tendies and you bring them home sometime, whatever, right? Like, but it can't be recreated. But I would say for like a real dish, like that's at home, one that actually I actually probably my favorite dish is actually the very first game meat that my wife ever ate is one of my favorite dishes, and it's bear heart tacos. And I think I have that further back down my Instagram, like how I make that. And I sous vide the heart in like kind of what I'll call just like a generic Asian sauce that I kind of pottle together with fish sauce and mirin and soy and whatever. And that kind of thing. So I kind of sous vide the bear heart in there for a few hours, and then I kind of break it all down into its parts and get all the stuff off, get all the sinew and get all like the Purkinje fibers off and all the different things that are in there. And then I slice that thin, and then that gets seared. And then if I'm really feeling zesty, I hand make the tortillas, and then I make like a pretty nice little slaw. And then from there, it's honestly probably one of the better representations of like what I love about hunting the most. I love, I love heart. It's absolutely delicious. I love eating bear. It's phenomenal. And I think that's always like a bit of a showstopper. People are like, you can eat bears. I'm like, and they're good.
Oh yeah.
Some maybe aren't, but most are really good. And then, and I love tacos. So it's pretty good.
Right on. Awesome. All right, buddy. So before we close out, how do people find you and your new brand and stuff? Like, what's the best channels for you?
Easiest way to find me is on Instagram, Dr. Matt Ward DC. I haven't posted a ton to my Hard Yards Performance page yet. I haven't quite learned how to kind of make more time in the day yet. So if I ever do, I'll be sure to tell everybody. And then you can hit me. You can find me at thisiscoffee.ca on Instagram or on the website. Super easily that way. That's the best way to get a hold of me. And if you ever message me and we're talking about something and then you ask me a question and then and I don't reply to you, I just want you to hit me, like, just bother me. You know what I mean? The worst thing I'm going to say is stop bothering me. But more than likely I've forgotten about it. It's gotten pushed so far down in my feed that I end up kind of missing it. So if something ever comes up and you're like, hey, you said you're going to send me this, please just ask me to send it again. I'm not going to be upset about it. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we had one last question come in from Clay Weber.
Yeah.
He's asking if you freeze your bear for a while before you enjoy it.
No. I mean, kind of what I would call usual process. I've eaten bear like right out in the field. Tendies right out in the field out of a bear. Absolutely fantastic. Obviously, do your due diligence with trichinosis and stuff like that. Medium rare right out of a bear is probably a poor choice. But I do. There are, and then, if I'm obviously getting jalapeno cheddar smokies made, or I'm doing it myself, or whatever's happening, but I do really try and I depend on how many bears I'll kill in a year, or if I have some from somewhere else or whatever, I'll try and keep some. I'll like cut some hams, like bone-in hams, out of the rears, and then I end up doing like a brine and a smoke on those.
Brine and smoke
ham. Yeah, phenomenal. I don't particularly freeze it for any amount of time. If I wanted to eat the heart, so we're going hunting here in a couple weeks for bears. Like if I, had the equipment, or if I killed a bear just like out in the Okanagan here, and I wanted to eat the heart like that night, I would and wanted to make bear tacos, I would make it that night.
Perfect. Awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for the question.
All right, my man. This has been an absolute riot, as I totally expected. And, on behalf of Blake and I and Spike Camp, we truly want to wish you the best of luck with everything you're doing, Maddie. It's awesome. This is Coffee Project is amazing. Don't forget us when you put Starbucks out of business. Remember your friends, okay? Like keep us in your Rolodex, brother.
Of course.
And we're going to get you, we're definitely going to get you back on after the end of the season, and we'll do a little recap and see what we can talk about, which will be tons of stuff. But thank you very much, sir.
I can't wait. And I'd honestly like to say thank you guys as well, because the Spike Camp initiative, when I first saw it, I thought, holy shit, this is going to be a monumental undertaking. But I feel like you guys are if you guys just can keep pulling your bootstraps up and keep doing it, it's exactly what our community needs. And I'm fucking loving every second of it. And I just want to thank you guys for your commitment to it, man.
Right on, brother. We hear you. And 100%. One last thank you. Just want to reach out to the Spike Camp members who sat in tonight. Thank you guys very much. Without you, we don't have a platform. So thanks again. And engage. It's now worth prizes. So stick with it. We got this rewards program. Like I said, we've got to kind of manipulate it a little bit and learn what works and what doesn't work. But at the end of the day, we're going to be giving a lot of cool stuff away over the year to our value members. So thanks, everybody. Have a good night.